Hello, intro to anatomy and physiology. This is your guys' first video lecture from Mrs. Lloyd. I'm going to tell you guys how to be super successful in this unit, and then we'll go over today's notes. So I first wanted to introduce you to one of my temporary pupils. I like to talk to at least somebody. So I'll usually have one of my dogs in the room with me. This cutie pie is Penny. She's the littlest dog, but also the oldest one that we have. I think she's 10, although you wouldn't know it. Anyways, I just want to show you guys what you need to do to be successful for this new unit. We're going to change things up a little bit. What you have been doing is we learned the names of our muscles. We built those models back at school. And then we just did a lot of online practice to prepare for you guys' tests that we took digitally. We're now moving on to a brand new unit, the nervous system. And we'll probably be following kind of the same little procedure each day. So I want to go over that with you real quick. So when you go into Plan Book, you should start with Plan Book every day. You guys will see your the different information here. So the stuff that's kind of in that reddish pink color, that's all for the honors anatomy and physiology class. Ignore all of that. Don't worry about that. But look for the teal. You guys are the teal class. So intro to A and P. And then today is Monday, the 30th. And so you'll read through my list of things to do. I try to put it out in nice sequential order for you. So first step, number one, find your note packets for the Unit 7, the Nervous System Study Guide. If you came in on Wednesday of last week, you picked up like a bunch of stuff from me, okay? The one I want you to find, it's a white packet. It's got a neuron on the front, and it says on the top Unit 7. You might also notice it has Truax Biology on there. These are the same notes that I use for the honors class. And I think using the format that we do in the honors class for you guys will be really helpful and beneficial. So we're going to be kind of using this mode of notes as opposed to where we just write out a whole bunch of stuff. We'll probably still use this. So if you notice, we have the chapter 10/11 study guide that's for the intro to A&P class. That's the beige paper. That's a useful thing to keep handy, but you don't need it immediately. The other thing for this unit we'll be using that I gave you guys was this. This will be a coloring activity that we will eventually do. You'll be labeling some of these pictures as we go through. Anyone's out. Hey, excuse me. So anyways, all that you really need right now is that one with the picture of the neuron on the front, right? So if you didn't come in Wednesday and you don't have this, notice on Plan Book, I've linked it here for you. So you can print this from home, or if you really love color pictures and you have a color printer, that's the really nice thing about this. Linked one is most of the pictures are in color, which I think helps for identifying some structures. So you might find that helpful. So you want to have this out and ready as I cover the notes with you guys today. The other things that are linked here on Plan Book is this video, obviously, but then I also have a link to the Google slideshow. So you'll see me going over the notes today. And when you click on this link, it'll take you to the exact same slideshow that I'm going to be using to go through this. As you use these notes in this slideshow, one thing you might find beneficial is that you need to view it in present mode. So click the present button because some of the graphics and stuff will fly in and some things might get covered up or uncovered. So that will be helpful. The other thing to pay attention to is I've got tons of stuff already on here, but a lot of these slides further down, I'm not ready for you yet. So every day as we go over this, I make sure and put the date on here, and we're going to cover these notes here today. And then right here on this slide where it says stop taking notes here, I'll continue to slide this down so you know basically how far we've gotten. Okay, so this is basically this is how far we've covered so far, little slide. Okay, so you can keep track that way. I think that's everything that I really wanted to go over with you. As you'll notice on Plan Book here, after I've covered the notes, I mentioned that your textbook might be helpful. I'll try to include what page numbers the material we went over in class goes through. Today, it's just like 2 pages of notes essentially that I'm going to cover with you. And so I recommend reading, and it's mostly pictures, honestly, from the start, page 360 to 362, just as a little supplemental something, because learning from home is not easy, and it's good to get this information from multiple sources. So, all right. So here we go. Make sure to have this out and ready. When we're all said and done with all of this, I want you to do your homework assignment, which I have linked down here on the bottom. Okay. So going to those notes page, we have Monday, March 30th. That's today. And we are just going to talk about how the nervous system is organized. Okay, that's all we're covering today. So your objective is to name the major divisions of our nervous system, both anatomical, so our structure, and functional, so the physiology part of it. Okay, that's the goal. This is not a picture in this packet. I usually start off with labeling some of these structures, but what I want you to do instead is flip over this packet to the blank side on the back. You've got a blank side of paper, or if you need more room or you prefer writing with lines, you could just take a loose leaf piece of paper and make sure and save it along with this. All your information for your homework is going to be written down on the back side here. In fact, I'll show you what my notes look like after I did this. Okay, so you're going to write a few things down. We're going to draw a little graphic organizer on the back side. You do not need to draw this picture though. This is just meant to be helpful as we talk about the functions of the nervous system. So I want you over here at the very top, write functions of the nervous system and copy this few things down. So our nervous system, as you know, it's like our brain and nerves, and that controls what we do, which is true. But there's basically 3 main functions that it does, and our brain controls everything, and it is amazing, but it's kind of simple too in how this whole action happens. And this graphic shows us this. So we receive information from the world around us. So it could be noises that you might hear. You might see a glass of water sitting in front of you. You might stub your toe. You might look out the window and see a bird flying on the bush like I just did. And those things that you see, it sends that information to your brain. And we call that the sensory or the sensory input of our nervous system. And so we have all of our different senses, right? Our taste, touch, sight, hearing, and smell. Couldn't think of the 5th sense there. And those are all special senses that tell us what is going on in the world around us. So then that information gets sent, to my brain, and then my brain decides what it's going to do with that information. So our sensory information is just about gathering information about the world around you using your special senses, okay? These sense organs that we have in our body. Did you stub your toe? Did you see a bird outside your window? You have a sense sending a signal to your brain that you're thirsty, right? You might sense dryness in your throat. Those are all sensory information that's being sent to your brain. And then your brain is the integration part of your nervous system. So your nervous system functions to sense, the sensory part, and then the integration part. And so this is where you make a decision. Okay, you are thirsty. So do you wait to finish this video and get a glass of water, or do you pause the video now and go get a glass of water, or take me with you on your personal device, your phone, or whatever you're using to go get a glass of water? That's where you are thinking, your brain is deciding what to do, okay? You stub your toe. That pain signal gets sent to your brain. What do? Do you jump up and down? Do you hold your foot? Do you retreat your foot back? What sort of things do you do based on that sensory input that you just got? That's the second function. And the third function of the nervous system is your motor response. So you decided to go get a glass of water. The physical act of using your muscles to get up out of wherever you are to go to the kitchen, get a glass of water, that's your motor response to what your brain just told you to do. So this is where you send a signal, an output to your muscles or your glands to respond in some way. And what's crazy to think about is all of the things you do all day long, whether it's talking or playing around on your phone or watching your anatomy and physiology lesson, everything that you're doing is only, at least consciously, using your muscles. That's it. That's all you use is your muscles throughout your entire day, whether it's talking to somebody on the phone, right? Is it logging into like a Zoom meeting or something like that your teacher's having you do? Is it scrolling aimlessly through social media? That's just muscles. Everything you do throughout your day is muscles. We also can control our glands to release hormones or sweat. And that's it. Those are the only things your body controls, muscles and glands. Everything else is all automatic or just structures that are built in there. That's it. It only can affect muscles and glands. So we call muscles and glands effectors. And that's important for you to remember, is that our muscles and glands are called effectors because our brain can have some effect on them. And so that's it. That's all your nervous system is. Receiving information of the world around you, deciding what it's going to do, and then taking that drink of water, that motor response. That's it. That's all your nervous system is. Now, obviously, it's complicated how it does all this, and we're going to get into it, but the functions of the nervous system, that's all. It's pretty easy. All right, so that should be written down, hopefully kind of at the top of your page here somewhere. You didn't have to draw that picture. But underneath that, we're going to make a little flow chart. So you can kind of see, I wrote mine in pencil, but I used 2 different colors. As you notice on the screen here, there's like blue arrows and pink arrows, and then some of these boxes are outlined in blue and pink. I would recommend that you use some kind of color coordination, whether it's highlighters or colored pencils. You can sketch it all out in pencil and go back and do it later. But the pathway is important. And so that's where the pink and the blue come into play. And I want you to pay attention to the arrow directions too, because that's how signals are getting sent. So this is about the organization of our nervous system. The first way that we organize our nervous system is basically thinking about our central nervous system, excuse me, or CNS for abbreviation, central nervous system. And all that is made up of your central nervous system is your brain and spinal cord. When we talk about that central part of your body, it's just your brain and spinal cord, okay? That's the integration part, essentially, of our functions of the nervous system. The other part that makes up our nervous system, at least the structures of it, is the peripheral nervous system. And that word peripheral, like your peripheral vision is like, if you take your hands out to your side and just look forward, like when can you see the fingers? I can kind of see them right here if I look straight forward, at least my hand. That's basically it means to the side. So my peripheral nervous system is everything branching off of my central nervous system, the PNS, the peripheral nervous system. The main things that are making up our peripheral nervous system is we have 12 cranial nerves, and those are all nerves that go to like your face and your ear and your tongue and your throat and your eyes and your skin of your face. Those are all like controlling parts of things on my head or neck region. And then the spinal nerves all branch off of your spinal cord, and they go down your arm into your fingers, into your abdomen and your chest and your legs and pelvic region. So those are all the branching off nerves for those. Okay, we will learn the 12 cranial nerves. It's hard, but a good thing. You'll have to memorize it probably in college. But we won't be memorizing all of the spinal nerves. Okay, so this is where the color coding is significant. So as we know that there's a sensory function of my nervous system, we have a sensory pathway in which that information, where I'm receiving information from the world around me, travels to my nerves, up my spinal cord, and then to my brain. Okay, so if you notice this blue box and the blue arrow, it's going from my sensory parts of my body, all of those sensory organs that we have, and then it's going to send the signal up to my peripheral nervous system. So if I stub my toe, it'll be a nerve coming from my lower appendages, one of the spinal nerves, probably one of the like number 31 or 30. And then it's going to send it up my spinal cord to my brain, and my brain's going to integrate that information and sense it as pain and make some decision about how I want to react. So that's the sensory pathway. It's just receiving information, going down the nerve to the spinal cord, up to the brain, and then my brain can integrate that information. So then my brain is going to send a signal out and tell my body how to respond. So that's the pink arrow here. So my brain decides, okay, let's send that signal down my spinal cord to the muscles of my leg, because I want to recoil my toe from whatever I just stubbed it on. And so it's going to send it down one of those spinal nerves. And then here's the pink arrow. Notice it's coming down. It's going to send that through my motor pathway. If you guys notice, sensory pathway, motor pathway, these are the functions of the nervous system too. So sensory and motor also have kind of another name called the afferent and efferent. So the afferent pathway is sending the signal up the brain. Okay, it senses something, whether it's a bird out the window or I stub my toe. The motor or efferent pathway is all of this sending of a signal down. So if I want to react to my stub toe by pulling my leg back, right? I'm going to, and I pull my leg back. Right? That's going to be my motor effect. And remember, the only effectors in your body, okay, are muscles and glands. So it can only have an effect on those. In this case, that I want to pull my leg back, that effect is going to be a voluntary action, because I'm going to my voluntary skeletal muscles. So if you remember our different muscle types, we had voluntary and involuntary. So skeletal muscles are voluntary, and they're a part of what we call the somatic nervous system. The somatic nervous system is the part of your body you consciously control. Right now I'm talking and I am consciously controlling the actions of my vocal folds and my tongue and my mouth in order to make language. I also, even though it seems very unconscious to me, I use my hands constantly when I talk, but that's a voluntary action. Okay? Picking up your phone, scrolling through your phone, that's a voluntary action, but that's part of the somatic nervous system. Now, if I didn't stub my toe, but instead my body says, okay, you need to lower your blood pressure. Okay, so there was a sensory information that sent it to my brain that said your blood pressure is higher than it should be. My brain integrated that information and is going to send it down my motor pathway, the efferent pathway, to say, let's lower blood pressure. That's going to not be voluntary. I can't lower my blood pressure at will. That's involuntary. So what it sends it down is the autonomic nervous system. Think autonomic as an automatic. These are all the things that your body controls automatically or involuntarily. So that's the cardiac muscle. So my heart. So if I'm trying to lower my blood pressure, maybe my heart beats a little slower. I can't consciously do that, but that's an unconscious involuntary action, the automatic nervous system. Or if it's pushing through food through your digestive system and controlling those smooth muscles, or still in the case of lowering blood pressure, it could be smooth muscle of my arteries, excuse me, smooth muscles of my arteries, and telling them to dilate, to loosen up so that more blood can flow through more easily and lower my blood pressure that way. It could also be stimulating my glands to release a certain type of hormone, which there are hormones that control your blood pressure. So maybe that autonomic nervous system is sending those signals to lower my blood pressure because I'm at rest and digest. Now, let's say my body said, you're getting chased by a tiger. I've been watching a lot of Joe Exotic. I'm getting chased by a tiger. So I am going to raise my blood pressure because I'm going to need more blood pressure to run away from this tiger and this surge of adrenaline. Okay. That is also an autonomic nervous system involuntary action, but we call that when it's your fight or flight, when you were trying to live, keep yourself alive, right? It's the sympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system. So that's the sympathetic division, our fight or flight response. My blood pressure would rise in that situation. I would breathe more heavily, all of these actions that would basically amp up everything in my body is called the sympathetic nervous system, okay? That fight or flight response. The opposite of that, so Mrs. Lloyd's wanting to lower her blood pressure because I'm being calm and just at home, chillaxing. That's called the parasympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system. So depending on what effect that you want to have on your body autonomically, okay, it's fight or flight, or it's nice and calm. We call that the rest and digest is the sympathetic nervous system. My body will be reacting different ways. And we'll get into the differences between those in more detail about what's happening to your body in those different divisions. Okay. This flow chart here is going to be important for your homework. So you want to make sure you have that kind of filled out. Obviously, pause the video if you need to. Also, I linked directly to this PowerPoint without Mrs. Lloyd's talking head, so you can always go back and look. I want you to add two other things to this. I want you to take a line and draw a dotted line underneath your boxes for the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. And on this flow chart, I want you to compare what these boxes are representing. So the two at the top are representing the structure or the anatomy of our nervous system. So the structural organization here is referring to brain and spinal cord and the nerves, okay? So that's our central nervous system, and our peripheral nervous system is all about the anatomy pieces of this. The functional organization, this whole other pathways that you see underneath the dotted line, these are like the more physiology responses, how the body functions in its role in that. And so those two different pathways, the sensory and motor, and then how the motor is divided up into my somatic and autonomic, and then autonomic is divided up into sympathetic and parasympathetic. All of those are called the functional organization of the nervous system. And so when your question, right, at the very beginning here, our objective, I should say, said, name the major divisions of the nervous system. That's what that slide is about, both anatomical and functional. I'm talking about, here's the anatomical pieces of it. And then here's the functional pieces of it. Excuse me. So there's nowhere where you need to write this information down. Just I want you to think about it, okay, as our little exit ticket here at the end. Here's a picture of a simplified version of the nervous system. The things in beige are representing the central nervous system, the CNS. The things in yellow are representing the peripheral nervous system. So I want you to tell me what are the two structural subdivisions of the nervous system. These two things at the top is the CNS and the PNS, okay, central nervous system, peripheral nervous system. So what are the main components or the organs of each of these? So in beige, what organs make up your central nervous system? That's right. I feel like Dora the Explorer. That's going to be your brain and your spinal cord. Okay, that's the anatomy, the anatomical components of the central nervous system. So now we know that. The peripheral nervous system, what are the two main types of organs or groups of organs that make up my peripheral nervous system? That's right. It's the 12 cranial nerves that make up those nerves that go to my face, and we'll go into those in more detail, and the 31 spinal nerves. Good job. You don't have to write this down anywhere, but that was just kind of a finishing up our lesson here. If it bothers you, this line's unlabeled. That's referring to the ganglion. Just consider it a part of the spinal nerves. We'll talk about that more later. That's all for your guys' notes. If you'll notice here, that slide says stop here. You don't need to do anything else further for today. So after you've had these notes taken down on the back side of your packet, I want you guys to possibly read in your textbook and go finish your homework assignment, which is linked in Plan Book for you. If you go back to Plan Book and click this, it'll take you right to that homework assignment. So chapter 10, you'll notice that the study guide packet, by the way, says unit 7. That's the way I organized it for the honors class. But for you guys, I want it to match your chapters in your textbook. So anyways, as you'll see here, that picture looks super familiar. This should be hopefully short and sweet for you to fill out. All right, you guys, have an awesome day. Message me if you have any questions, concerns. Have a good one.